7:04. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to begin with.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
React.
That's awesome.
Okay. Consideration of approving the minutes from the regular governing board meeting on August 23rd, 2022 as presented. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Ms. Tippett moves and Mr. Aiken seconds. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is staff, student, and community recognitions. Mr. Caruth.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. We have a wonderful special announcement tonight. Mrs. Bates, would you like to introduce your crew?
Good evening, President Anderson, Mr. Caruth, and members of the board. This evening, we have Melissa John here with us. Last year.
I was thinking of your Cottonwood.
Oh, my
first.
Cottonwood kiddos?
You went
Okay.
your Cottonwood kiddos first. I'll do.
Okay,
I'll
Cottonwood
do
kiddos, and you'll do Melissa?
Mrs. Johns, yes.
I was going to say, Mr. Caruth, you did not tell me I was going to do that, so I am up here slightly panicking. But
your Cottonwood Elementary second grade student.
Thank you. I would love to introduce my
Melissa's
babies.
class.
Thank you. So we have students this evening from Miss Bliss's music class, and they're going to share with you some patriotic numbers that they're preparing for our school community. Thank you for having us.
So, Ms. Bliss, if you want to come on up, the stage is yours. Thank you very,
Thank you
very
so much. That was just wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your beautiful voices with us.
And parents, thank you for coming out as well tonight. It's awesome to remember the purpose of why we do this work here twice a month. So that helps set the tone. Thank you. We have a few other recognitions this evening. First up is Michelle Wood, followed by Diane Vargo.
President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, and governing board members, good evening. Well, it's very hard to follow those adorable children, but I will not sing for you. Tonight, I'd like to recognize 2 veteran special education teachers in the district. The first is Jeff Bold at Sienega High School. He's the instructional team leader at Sienega, and he truly is the glue that holds the Sienega special education program together. Jeff is a creative guy that always finds way to support students. And whenever there's a challenge that he faces, he comes to the table and has at least 5 ideas of how to address that challenge. So we appreciate all of his hard work and everything that he does. The second teacher is Jamie Tornator. Jamie has moved into our homebound teaching position this year. And she also has had a little bit of time to be able to go out and support teachers when we have a new student transitioning into the district. Sometimes when we have new students, they require some creative programming, and Jamie has been able to come alongside those teachers this year and just give them a little extra support. So we appreciate her help. Next, I'd like to recognize Lisa Baker. She's a new speech language pathologist in the district. She's done a really fantastic job of stepping into our preschool and being extremely flexible when we needed to change a few things on her at the very last minute. So we appreciate her hard work and her flexibility. Finally, I would like to thank Kendra Santucci. Kendra is the communication specialist for the district, and she's been supporting our special education program and department by making a few videos. She's taken a lot of time with us, and we really appreciate the support and just her helping us to tell the story about special education in Vail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Ms. Vargo.
Good evening, President Anderson, governing board members, and Mr. Kruth. I would like to recognize our studious Mesquite teachers for reading and preparing for their first structured literacy assessment for Module 1. Way to go, 100%ers. I'd also like to thank Angie Welch for preparing the reading materials and leading discussions as we're learning more about structured literacy together. I'd also like to recognize both our classroom paraprofessionals and inclusion paraprofessionals. They come together as a team to help support each other in so many ways, such as coverages with classes, duties, and students. We really are better together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vargo. I have a couple of other district-wide recognitions I'd like to make. The first is recognizing Janie Evans who did an excellent job in organizing the district middle school orchestra boot camp that occurred on August 24th. She did that in conjunction with other music teachers, Grant Knox and Ken Mars. High school students from Sienega, Empire, Micah Mountain also took the middle school students under their wing and mentored them through playing their first full-length concert songs for the beginners and more challenging songs for the advanced students. And then they concluded this with a 3-hour rehearsal presentation to the parents and audience. So it was huge work, great recognition for our performing arts in our school district. And then, Mrs. Bates, I'd like to recognize Miss Melissa Johns, teacher at Cottonwood Elementary School, who was recently recognized by the U.S. Department of State. And Melissa is here. Melissa, can you stand? Thank you. I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. The U.S. Department of State and the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board announced that Melissa, who is a gifted education teacher at Cottonwood Elementary School, received a Fulbright Teachers for Global Classroom Program Award. For over 75 years, the Fulbright program has provided more than 400,000 participants chosen for their academic merit and leadership potential, and provided them with an opportunity to study, teach, and conduct research, exchange ideas, and contribute to finding solutions to shared international concerns. Congratulations, Melissa, and thank you for your work.
Well done.
I just have to brag on Melissa real quick. Her mom and dad are here as well if they want to raise their hands too. But also, this is the second year in a row that Melissa's won an award. Last year, she won the State Arizona Gifted Teacher of the Year award for her work. So
Thank you.
we'll look forward to how you top this next year. That's all we have for staff, student, and community recognitions.
That's wonderful. Okay, call to the public. At this time, the board may consider and discuss comments and concerns from the public. Those wishing to address the governing board on items not on tonight's agenda may do so at this time. Speakers are requested to hold their comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the Arizona Open Meeting Law, board members may not respond, comment, or ask questions of speakers regarding issues not on the agenda. I have 3 requests to address governing board forms. Is there anyone else that is wanting to address the board on items not on tonight's agenda? Okay. The first one is Anastasia.
Hello. I am coming here tonight to address a certain issue that's happened in this last week, which most of you are probably already aware of. As a governing board candidate, we have certain rights and stipulations and things that we are able to do and things that we are not able to do in running for our candidacies. And one of which is we are allowed to advertise that we are running to the general public, and we are allowed to put our signs up on general public easements, even if they border a school. This last weekend, I had to be notified by a candidate, and furthermore, finding myself that all of my signs had been illegally removed. And I do have the Pima County zoning maps if anyone cares to look at them. The fines are $750 per sign. And my signs were strewn across the road without contacting me prior, which is also part of Arizona state statute. I am allowed to be called if there was a problem, and I was not. And there are other schools where our signs, myself and Leroy Smith being our signs, have been removed completely, and they are nowhere to be found. I'm here to tell you that you are on notice tonight publicly that if my signs are removed again and Leroy's signs are removed again, there is going to be legal consequences, of which I've already started. This is not acceptable. And it is also indicative of the way I have been treated, Leroy has been treated. No one has any rights to put their hands on my property that I paid for from my committee, from my personal funds. Not anybody, not a principal, not a staff member. And judging from the staff that it was already admitted from Stacy, that it was principals that she's been speaking with to allow them to remove our signs from what they deem to be school property. This is unacceptable and will not be tolerated on any level. So just know that I am going to take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. The next individual is Geraldine.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight on something not on the agenda. As many already know, political signs have been removed from public right-of-ways areas at schools by school employees at the request of principals at these schools. The signs were placed in the public right-of-way according to Pima County. It is illegal to remove political signs in public areas. It is a Class 2 misdemeanor with a $750 fine and up to 4 months in jail per incident. I'm requesting the board and the district send a message or email immediately to all district schools and let staff know that the signs are not being placed on private school property. If this continues to happen, further legal action will be taken according to the law. I can provide the information of the Pima County map showing where these public rights of way are at the schools. Public rights of way are from the top part of the sidewalk area closest to the school to the street if there's a sidewalk. If not, it is the property line. As candidates, we know where we are allowed to put signs, and the ones that were illegally removed were not on school property. Signs from 5 candidates have been removed by school officials. This needs to stop today. Thank you again for letting me speak.
Thank you, Geraldine. The next individual is Mark Tate.
Good evening, President Anderson, Superintendent Caruth, board members. I want to take an opportunity tonight to really talk again about where we say education is a community effort. And wanted to recognize Rincon Optimists. August 20th, the Rincon Optimists held their annual shoe giveaway in support of the Vail School District. They also do it for TUSD and a couple other school districts. And just as a reminder, this organization really is located at the 49ers, nowhere close to us, but they're consistently supporting of the Vail School District. Dr. Shaw, a teacher at RBMS, is a member of that club, and she even has a junior club there at RBMS that does many wonderful things within the community. But on August 20th, the Optimists were at Skechers, the one on Broadway, near Kolb, to welcome and assist students to find their perfect pair of shoes. Student service coordinators had invited students and families to come to Skechers for the Optimists to meet, greet them, and to just show them around the store to find their perfect size. That one of the most common questions was, well, how much can I spend? And the Optimists always say, if you find the shoe in the store, it's yours. And so that's really neat. And it's really neat to see the thankfulness in the eyes of the students and of the parents as they're looking through the store for that perfect pair of shoes. Also wanted to thank student service coordinators for their time. That was kind of in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the school year for them. But to make those contacts, and a number of people in the district were tied up with Vail Family University. So we kind of last minute asked Carrie Arrows if she would kind of be our eyes and ears at that event at Skechers on that same day during the same hours. And she immediately jumped on it and said, you bet, I'll be there, and tell me what you want me to do. And then also just thanks to Jonathan Ehler, a recent graduate of Empire, heavily involved in the photography department there at Empire, and now a graduate, but he went and took pictures not only at Vail Family University, but at Skechers for the Optimists. And then they use some of those videos for requests for funds to support the activities they do in the community. So just want to take a moment and say thank you to Rincon Optimists, Dr. Shaw, Skechers, Kara Arrows, and Jonathan Eber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Next item on the agenda is acknowledgement of public request to speak on items on the agenda. Is there anyone present that would like to speak on items that are on tonight's agenda? Okay, not seeing any, we'll go on to correspondence and reports. Mr. Caruth?
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. I just have a couple of quick items for superintendent's report. Want to acknowledge that our starting tomorrow, Wednesday, through the rest of the week, we'll be having half days at various levels for parent-teacher conferences. So as we wind down the first quarter, which occurs the following week, there'll be parent-teacher conferences at our elementary, middle, and high schools. Just at various times. I have to pull up the calendar to remember exactly which is which, but they start half days will begin tomorrow. Also want to just point out that with the upcoming break and also with the election in November being scheduled on election day, scheduled on a regular scheduled board meeting, that we'll need to juggle around some of our board meeting dates. I know we've talked about this internally as a board, but I just want to be able to communicate that in a message now. So we will have a regularly scheduled September 27th board meeting. We will hold one meeting in October, which is October 18th. And then 2 meetings in November, November 1st and 15th. That moves the board meetings away from both election day, which is the following week, and also the following week after the 15th, which is the Thanksgiving week. So that's kind of where we are at this point. We'll need to have some further discussion about December's meeting and when we're going to do that. As I mentioned in an email I threw out to all of you, possibly considering Tuesday, December 6th is our meeting in December. That would allow for any board member who might want to attend the new board orientation with the new board members at the ASBA conference, which begins on the 14th of December to occur. So just understand that we have our normal schedule, but this is the time of the year when break and holidays and other things fall in. So just want to announce that there'll be some disruptions on that normal schedule. We'll clearly post those as to why. Also, want to just acknowledge that on September 30th is our Beyond Textbooks Super Conference. And we are preparing for that event. And you all participated in the ASBA Law Conference. I would imagine there's about 400 or 500 participants at that conference. BT Super Conference right now has 600 people coming from mostly from Arizona, but also from around the nation. It's truly turning into one of the largest professional development opportunities that are provided in Arizona. All of them are Beyond Textbook partners. Many of the sessions are put on by our partner districts as well. So it's just a huge, honestly, when we step back and look at how do we proactively collaborate as educators for the betterment of young people and communities, this is how you do that. There will be people from school districts, traditional school districts, people from charter schools, and people from private schools all attending this event. So it's pretty spectacular. And I just want to show you one other real quick thing, because I literally just got this from Mr. Chesborough. When we talk about what Beyond Textbooks Reach is, you can see that map. That is represented of just this week, teachers logging in and accessing Beyond Textbooks resources from around the country. So when we talk about the good work that we do in our school district and how we link arms with others literally across the state and across the nation to better that work, this is an incredible representation of that. And frankly, it's also a wonderful representation of our continued desire to be a lighthouse district. That's all I have for staff student community recognitions and my superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Kruth. Board reports. Do we have anyone who would like to report this evening? Yes.
I want to thank Mr. Barger and Ms. Tinkersley for our visit to Vail Academy and also the VIC. I thought it was a great visit. It was wonderful to see the additions, the buildings at both sites, and just to see the wonderful things that are happening there. Great things. And very different things at both sites, meeting kids' needs in different ways. So I'm grateful that they took the time out of their day to take us around. I also want to report that I went to the law conference this last week with my fellow board members and was able to learn a lot about case law that was really helpful, and also just updates both in policy and law going forward. I also think that related to your presentation just now, I always think it's interesting when we go to conferences and when we introduce ourselves or when people see our name tag that say Vail, inevitably I get people that say, "You're from Vail?" And then they talk about BT and what an impact it's made on their students in their district. So it's just a testament of the impact that BT and our teachers are making across the country. So thank you.
Mr. King.
I do. I was actually taking a little bit of time to write a couple extra pieces too. All right. On August 25th, I attended the Pantana open house, and that was actually kind of amazing to see the students and staff and how much pride that they take in their schools, right, and their programs. Isaac, the principal out there, he was awesome. He, instead of like doing doing the tour himself. Nope, he grabbed one of the students, Chris, and he actually took me around and showed me the various components of the school and the programs, introduced me to everybody. It was actually really, really cool to see. So I told Chris I would give him a shout out. So if he's paying attention, there it is. All right, I wanted to make sure he got that. Additionally, this past week, we attended the ASBA law conferences. There was plenty of time to socialize. There was a lot of learning that took place. Various topics were discussed that were applicable to board members, teachers, and administrators. Some of the breakout sessions I attended were mandatory reporting, which is important for anyone who works in a school setting. So legislative update, which is important for us as a district, as we are subject to the laws passed by the legislature, which if you were here for the study session, you heard some about that, and you'll hear more as well. Additionally, I attended a breakout session on free speech. This is key for us as as a board to remember that just because we may not like what is said, we must still respect the constitutional rights of our constituents. That last sentence leads me to my next comment. Saturday, September 17th is U.S. Constitution Day. This is a celebration of the date in 1787 when the United States Constitution was signed. And in 36 U.S. Code Section 106, Constitution Day and Citizenship Day was adopted as law in 2004. Additionally, this Friday, 16th of September, is National Prisoner of War and Missing in Action Day. As we heard from the second graders, the little patriotic song they had, that was amazing. This holiday is celebrated every year on the third Friday of September. Okay. And lastly, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. If you are thinking about suicide or know somebody who is, please call or text 988. That is the nationwide number. And that is all for my board report. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a little board report tonight. I also attended the Pantano Open House, and it was really, it was very well done. And there was a lot of excitement among the staff and the students. And the students were so proud of the different programs that they're involved in. And the staff were so engaging, and I really appreciated the visit. And then we all attended the Law and Legislative Conference. And I just thought I'd review some of the sessions so the community can know that what it is that we go and study and learn about updates in the law and what is coming down the pike perhaps for next year. So some of the sessions were parental rights, the history, context, and Arizona law, and HB 2161, that's going to be policies that were going to be enacted. We reviewed the policy and best practices for those new laws. Public participation in board meetings, best practices in involving the public. We also got a capital litigation update, which hopefully it's going to go to trial. And this is a very important lawsuit because this, honestly, this has been going on since the 1970s, I think, trying to get an equitable funding for all of our students. And we just need to get that done. We also had the legal and legislative update, which again keeps us informed of what's going on and what we can expect to encounter in the future. Free speech advocacy, which is always good to review. Revisiting religion in schools, the recent Supreme Court case and how that can affect us. Crisis communication, best practices, and we can always learn new and better ways to communicate. And curriculum review, textbook adoption, current law and policy. So it's always a really good conference to go to because they put on really good sessions. And also it's very good to have some time with our fellow board members just to visit and strengthen our relationships, which going forward, relationships in a board is probably the most important thing to make a board successful. And from the board is the success of a school district. So I want us all to keep that in mind. So with that, I will go on to the consent agenda. All items listed below are consent matters and will be considered by one motion at this time. There will be no discussion of consent items. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda by request. All items not accepted and approved as part of the consent agenda will be considered individually. Do any board members wish to pull an item? Okay, Mr. Caruth.
Thank you, President Anderson. Members of the board, it's recommended that the Vail School District Governing Board approve all items on the consent agenda as presented.
I'll accept a motion in a second.
Second.
Okay, Mr. King moves and Ms. Tippett seconds. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is old business, and the first item is Enrichment Program Coordinator Job Description Reclassification. Mr. Caruth.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. This item was studied the last board meeting. It's back for action. It is dusting off and updating a job description that we've used in community services before. I'll let Mrs. Kubiak speak to the specifics of that, and then I'll make the recommendation.
So President Anderson, Mr. Caruth, governing board members, again, this was a study item at our last board session, and it is a job description and reclassification of the position. This position has been vacant since 2020. It is not impacting anybody at this time, but we do feel that there is a great need to, again, put somebody back into this position, hire someone for this position to just, again, to help support the community programs and all 9 sites that we currently have.
So with that, I'll make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve the Enrichment Program Coordinator job description reclassification as presented.
I'll accept a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Ms. Pratt moves and Mr. Aiken second. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next section of the agenda is new business, and the first item is transportation incentive proposal.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. I'm going to speak to most of this, but I'm going to ask Mr. Jerry Brown to also back me up both on this one and the next one. So we'll tag team a little bit on this. It took my wife over 48 hours to get home from her trip in Scotland to dropping my girl off, our girl off for college, in large part because there was a lack of a number of staffing in airports to make that happen. You walk into a restaurant, they're rarely fully staffed. There is a really a labor shortage and an incredibly tight market. We're seeing that in particular in our classified positions, but most acutely where we are seeing that is in our transportation with our bus driver department. And so I just point out those other 2 pieces because it is not something that is specific to the Vail School District, or is it specific to one kind of position, but it is most acute for us in transportation. This board has recently increased bus driver pay to $18.10, which pushes us in the upper echelon of starting pay around the valley, and $14.10 for bus monitors. Yet we are still have over 12 vacant driver positions at this point. We are aggressively, in fact, I do not know of another school district who is being as proactive as we are in trying to find, search for, train drivers. We're the only school district in our region who provides training for a CDL for people who come in and don't do that. In fact, to the point where we've got other smaller districts jumping in with us. Amphi doesn't do it. Sunnyside doesn't do it. TUSD doesn't do it. We do it. Mr. Brown and his staff trained 12 new drivers to earn their CDLs over the summer. And yet we had 9 drivers leave us over the summer. So you could look at it as a glass half full situation or glass half empty situation. We look at it as that effort netted us 3 drivers. That's why we do that. Every job fair we're present at, we're talking about that. Mr. Brown and his staff have buses out advertising this all the time. School districts around the country are looking to reduce bus service in a variety of ways. Many are reducing the number of stops, not providing transportation for field trips, not providing transportation for athletic events. Some are going to things, and Saurita, our neighboring school district, is doing this, where in essence they're providing a rolling blackout for parents in bus service. So in a 9-week period of time, you may have 2 weeks of that period of time where you're, as a parent, are required to provide your own, to find your transportation to school. There is no bus service to you. We are doing none of those things. Mr. Brown and his staff are regularly covering field trip routes, extracurricular events, providing transportation for after school so we can run tutoring programs, all of that. When on any given day, we're down 12 drivers, as I mentioned, and another, it's not uncommon that we're missing another 10 or so drivers for calling out sick. That requires really a department-wide scramble to make happen. So people who have CDLs but are working inside the department are then required to go leave those jobs and drive for 6+ hours a day. So it's not a sustainable situation. So Mr. Brown and our HR staff have come up with what we believe, and I fully support, is an incentive package for drivers to help mitigate this problem. We talked about, frankly, simply increasing pay, but we're already at the top end of that pay scale. And frankly, we feel that as I talked to Mr. Brown about this, tell me what you think if we put our finger on this issue, we'll make it better. And this is the package that's before you. So there's a sign-on bonus for new hires, categorized for those who are without a CDL. They can earn up to $600 over the course of a 6-month period of time. If they stay with us, and experience, those drivers with CDLs can earn up to $900. And then there's retention incentive for returning and continuing bus drivers, a bonus of $500 at the end of the fiscal year. A retention, routes incentive, because for bus drivers who receive a $1 hour differential, for special needs drivers. Transportation monitors that are assigned to special needs routes will be designated as transportation monitors special needs. And this new position will be updated to reflect the unique job duties associated with being a monitor on a special needs route. That base pay of that level would be $14.50 instead of the $14.10 that I referenced earlier. Then there would be activity route incentives for drivers who work after hours. Will receive to run those activity routes of $3 an hourly differential when driving those routes. And then there's also an attendance incentive. This incentive will reward staff with 0 absences, as they will receive $50 incentive for each month with no absences, up to $150 a quarter. That's kind of the outline of what we're talking about and how we want to bring that forward to you. That has we've run the calculations on the impact of that, and be a little over $120,000 a year to implement that at the M&O budget money we have to be able to the money to be able to easily cover that. So Mr. Brown is here if you have any other questions, but I just wanted to paint the picture of the broader background rather than having Mr. Brown do that. And I would just say this, I said this to Mr. Brown in our leadership meeting. I've been in and out of the transportation department in the Vail School District for over 27 years now. The culture and the climate of the department now is as good as it's ever been, better than it's ever been. In light of the almost daily challenges that are present there. And unfortunately, Mr. Brown and his staff, if you think of the mean, please be kind to the 4 people who showed up at the restaurant today. That doesn't always happen, and those that are there and are short-staffed are taking the brunt of some of the anger as a result of this. And it is not for lack of effort. It's not for lack of trying. In fact, I absolutely confident that we're out innovating and out hustling all other transportation departments. It's just trying to address the issue. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Maybe do that. Let me just say this. This is an action item.
It's a study.
It's an action item.
The first one, A.
No, it's a study.
Transportation incentive proposal is action.
It's A. I think on the printed, it just printed before.
Oh, yeah, on the
posted
Well,
agenda.
it says
study.
action.
Thank you,
Sorry,
sir. That's
On the
okay.
print, it says study.
That said, we normally bring something for study and then action. I would rather bring this to action, and then if you want to study it, we can do that, pull that back. But I'll go ahead and make the recommendation. The Vail School District Governing Board approve the transportation incentive proposal as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mr. King-
Sorry.
Mr.
Jumped the
King,
gun on you.
Mr. King moves and Mr. Aiken seconds. Are there any questions or comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mr. Aiken.
Thank you, President Anderson. I almost called you President King, sorry. So I love this. I'm going to be candid. It's not enough. We need to pay more. And I'll tell you why. It's not an apples to apples comparison, but it's a fruit to fruit comparison. I did this at my job, right? And what we experienced was that when people hit 90 days or 180 days, they're like, sweet, my money, and they took off, right? Because they got their incentive for starting. So it's my opinion that it both needs to be more and it needs to be longer, right? Like we need to, I mean, I don't know, every 90, I'm not entirely sure. I'd love to participate in thinking through that. But like, I don't know. I don't even know. $400 instead of $200 and $600 instead of $300, I think is a critical thing. I love the differential, the 3-hour differential for activity routes. Because last night when I picked Molly up from volleyball at 9 o'clock, I was thinking that poor bus driver, like they're not going to get home until 10 or whatever they live, right? So I'm really, really excited to see that. And I also think the attendance incentive needs to be more. One thing I do want to add, and I realize this is action item right now, but one thing we started doing with my company is instead of cash, we're actually giving gift cards. I mean, that creates a different kind of tax burden, and that's probably a nightmare for our HR friends. Michelle, maybe? No. But I'm just saying the employees love it, and if Michelle's looking at me with death darts. Yeah, I know. But I mean, if the problem that we're trying to solve is employee retention and the culture is superior, which I absolutely know that it is, then I'm just making observations from what the struggles I've been dealing with. And honestly, it hasn't worked to the effect that we want it to work to. The only thing I would ask is that, sorry.
No, please.
Can I finish?
Mine is related to yours.
Okay,
So
can I
before
finish?
they start speaking, I want to go.
I presume you were going to, and if you didn't, I would request that we do have metrics to capture, like, did people actually bail after 90 days or 6 months, or did they actually stick around? But I mean, conceptually, it's fantastic. I love it. I just think it needs to be more money, in my opinion.
Ms. Tippett.
Okay, so kind of related to that, my question was, can you tell us about the process to develop this program so that we can understand that it is appropriate for the goals that you're trying to? Did you have the opportunity to talk with staff, for instance, to see if it would be helpful to them?
Yeah, Mr. Brown, why don't you
Thank you.
dive in and how you,
Thank you, President, as you said, Mr. Caruth and board members. I did talk to staff. I talked to some of our veteran staff to see, and a lot of folks have been there when other incentives were tried there. I also talked with some of the district administrators who were familiar with some of the other incentives that had been implemented at one time, and they were successful. The one that wasn't as successful was the attendance bonus, because the payout was at the end of the semester. So if someone missed a day in August, let's say, for a wedding or something, then there was no incentive to show up any other day during that first semester because they'd already lost the incentive. So we broke it up into months, and then we decided to pay out on a quarterly basis just for some reinforcement. And as far as setting amounts to this, it was pretty difficult, but I talked to a lot of transportation directors that are doing something like this. And again, my competition isn't with the private sector, it's with other school districts. So there are a lot of school districts that aren't doing anything like this yet, but they're very interested in starting something like this. So just kind of looking at what other directors were doing in the districts where they implemented something like this, they did find that there was some impact, positive impact from this. For us, to be honest with you, the majority of the newer drivers that we've trained and hired, they didn't even last a month. They didn't last a month. So,
Mr. Brown, where are they generally going? Can you provide some context to that? Because I know they're
okay,
leaving.
when they resign, you mean? When they resign?
Yes.
It's really across the board. There's not any real trend to it, but the ones that are leaving with their CDLs that really impact us are going to the private industry, right, where they can make a lot of money and they have sign-on bonuses as well. So they're going to places like waste management, Republic Services, the mines, anywhere where they can utilize that CDL. The competition for drivers is so high right now. Even van drivers, there are van drivers that are making more than a CDL driver. And a lot of those van positions don't require a CDL. So again, I'm not even trying to compete with those private companies. They can just pass those expenses on to their customers. We obviously we don't do anything like that, but I'd like for us to be as aggressive with this and as innovative with this, because no one else is doing this. TUSD recently started their own program with sign-on bonuses, and they're not far away from us in terms of the actual amounts there. As far as what you're saying there, I'd like to track this. I want to track this to share that information with Michelle Quiros and Katie Dabney to look at adjustments that we might have to make. If it's not hitting the desired objectives here, then maybe we make some adjustments to it. But yeah, I don't want to just not track this, especially the time intervals on that, the 90 days and the 180 days. I think it's important to see if this is really giving us the results we want from it. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's a lot of information.
How about this side of the,
What's that?
do you have a question?
One of the areas that I would look at or potentially look at is the people who are leaving. Where are they at in their career path, career progression? Are these people who are, this is first career? Are these people who this is second or sunset careers? And then how far along are they leaving? Are they leaving because they have that CDL and it's just another step to get that Class A license? Or are they just leaving because, they're again, it is the corporate world that, can raise rates, pass it on to customers, which we can't do.
Well, there's a couple of things about that. Again, there's no hard and fast trend that you can point to and say that's exactly why we're losing people. Every pupil transportation department in Southeast Arizona struggles with the same thing. Waste management doesn't care if they get a Vail driver or TUSD driver, Sunnyside. If they can get their hands on a CDL driver, they're going to do it. And some of these companies are very open about that. They'll tell me right off the bat, if I can come in and poach your drivers, I'm going to do it. And so, but to get to your question, with people that leave, it's just, there's no trend to it. Some people find it very difficult to do this job because of the schedule. You come in at 5:30 in the morning, you work until 9:30, and then there's this big break in the middle of the morning and the early afternoon. You come back at 2, and for some activity drivers, they can be out there until 8 o'clock or longer. And then it's not even a year-round job. It's 200 days. And so we call it a full-time job. And for the most part, you're going to be working throughout the year. But then there are these breaks where income is not guaranteed. If you're not driving an intercession route, or maybe you don't have any field trips during those breaks, you're not driving summer school routes, then you're out of work really. So those features, those characteristics are what make this job very, very difficult to attract people. We do have some success with retirees. Those aren't the people that are generally leaving. They're people that we are targeting when we recruit. I'm involved with the Arizona Workforce Veterans Workforce Program, very actively involved in that. The DoD Skills Bridge Program to help transitioning veterans to come and find employment. They're not as dependent on income as other people because they have retirement income. Parents that are looking for jobs that align with their kids' school schedules. I mean, there are still some people that find this job attractive, but you really have to be very specific on who you're looking for, and then just really aggressive in targeting those people.
Are you engaged with the TAPS program?
Yes.
At both Fort
Both
Huachuca
Fort Huachuca and yes, absolutely.
What about Luke
No,
and Florence?
no, too far a distance. Yeah, those folks are not going to drive down here. If I can get my hands on somebody from Sierra Vista or Cochise County, and I do have 3 drivers from there, I'm real fortunate. But for the most part, especially with the rising price of gas, this week after Friday, I'll lose 2 drivers to Sarita, and that's a real heartbreaker because these are 2 people that we recruited, we found in job fairs, we trained them, they have CDLs, and they're going to go there because they're now making a dime more an hour than we are. So in this business, I shared this with some administrators. Drivers are just a different group of folks. I mean, for a lot of them, it really does come down to how much am I going to make in this job? And with some of these incentives, that offsets that little bit of extra that some districts are able to pay their drivers. They don't have these kinds of incentives. And up to now, I'm not willing to share this with them. They're my competition. So,
Mr. Aiken?
You triggered another memory. What we also do is I think we call it a commute stipend. Like if we have an employee that lives more than 25 miles away, we tack on, I don't remember what it is. I think it's variable. We tack on some dollar amount every paycheck, basically helping them to offset their gas cost. I have like 5 people doing that right now, and they haven't quit yet. I mean, that's my measure of success. Have they quit?
There's also the fact that Vail is on the outskirts of Tucson proper, and the routes are so long too. It's difficult, isn't it?
yeah, it's very challenging that way.
Question.
Ms. Pratt?
In some ways, I feel silly asking you, have you thought of this? Because it feels like you have thought of everything. But just listening to the presentation and the things that you've said, I just did a quick peek again at the vacancy list that was sent out this week. There's really not a lot of positions that are half day or 3 to 4 hours a day on a school site, but there are, at least for this week, there's at least one. And I imagine that sometimes there are a few that pop up. Is it something that bus drivers that we could think about? I mean, that's also kind of a hard to fill on a site level, somebody who wants to work just a few hours a day. So have we thought about trying to pair those and see if we can?
Yes,
solve
absolutely.
yeah,
And I
okay.
really appreciate you saying that last part there, because honestly, I spend a great deal of time thinking about this being as innovative and as creative, as open-minded as I can be about all of this. And absolutely, we've looked at something like that. Sometimes the problem with that, though, is the CDL requirements really limit how much time a driver can be on the clock.
Oh,
So you can't work somebody from 5 a.m. to 8 o'clock all the way straight through. It's very, very regulated.
Okay.
And so, yes, when I was new to this and a little bit more naive, of course I thought that, well, let's just fill 2 needs at once here. There's their need at the school sites and our needs in transportation. But the CDL requirements, as you know, are very specific. How long a person can work, how many hours, when they have to take breaks. That's why when people go out of town on field trips, we don't have those drivers the very next day because they have to have a minimum time off the clock to rest. So that makes it very, very difficult when, especially now with the sports season, we struggle to cover these sports routes, but we know that even if we get them covered tonight, tomorrow morning, those drivers who are on those routes tonight are not going to be in for the morning shift. So yeah, we definitely have thought of that.
Okay, thank you for that perspective. I think looking at this document, as I was reading it, I was thinking, oh, but what about this? And the next paragraph would be, addressing that. And I thought, oh, what about this? And same thing. So I think that this document really, you guys really have thought of all the ways that you can incentivize and to be able to also, I think just realizing the work that's being done right now. So I think I love that so many different areas are targeted and different routes and different, new and returning. I also really appreciate sometimes we think about the, incentivizing people to come, but then we forget to acknowledge the work that's already being done with the people already here. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
So, and I'll be interested to see in a couple of months when we can measure some of this to see how it's going.
Any other questions or comments? I'll call for the vote. Oh, I have one. Oh, okay. Yes.
So I think maybe to address Mr. Aiken's concern, promise to come back if we need to change something.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, I'll call for the vote now. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is Transportation Monitor, Special Needs Job Description and Position. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. This is actually related to the previous item in the sense that it's creating a new job description for transportation monitor specific to the special needs job description. So we can go through that in detail. Mr. Brown, happy to talk to you about that, but it just recognizes this position, recognizes the specific nature of a monitor and the additional training and expertise, frankly, that they need to be able to monitor on a transportation route. So this is a study item. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
You were talking about this, that it's changing in the incentive for like 40 cents for that during the previous agenda item.
Yes, this would.
So this would be a
Yeah,
14.50.
I can remember. I didn't remember the exact amount. It was 40 cents. Thank you, Mr. King.
Okay, so no questions or comments. It seems like it's a good path to take right now. So thank you. Next item on the agenda is Grants Manager, Job Description and Position. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson and members of the board. As we mentioned, I know when we were developing the budget, we're looking at kind of how might we need to reclassify some positions within the our business office area, in particular, Mrs. Cervantes retiring, and kind of what we wanted to look at how things shake out. So Mrs. Quiros has done that in her department as far as some of the specific areas and that need reclassification and some buoying of support. So do you want to, Mrs. Quiros?
President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. Just like Mr. Cruz was saying, that we are taking this time to kind of restructure what's going on in the district office, and just a little bit of statistics for you. In the way of the grants manager, the reason we're wanting to, we have before you tonight that position is because we have increased the amount of money that we've received in grants by about 3 times what we received 5 years ago. And so just the demand on a regular basis to monitor that, and the new funds that we are receiving, they have a whole different set of rules and regulations that we must follow and maintain. And so we felt it's necessary at this time to go ahead and have somebody that focuses specifically on grants itself.
So again, this is a study item. I'm happy to answer any questions, but this will otherwise be back for action at the next board meeting.
Any comments or questions? You know, after reviewing the description and qualifications and the amount of money that's involved, I think this is overdue to have a manager for this, because I do understand the regulations and requirements and monitoring. It is a full-time job, so I'm glad to see this. Thank you. Okay, yeah.
Well stated.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is accounts payable supervisor, job description and position. Mr. Kruth.
Thank you, President Anderson and members of the board. This is related to the previous item and a bit of a restructuring there. And this has to do with an accounts payable supervisor job description. Mrs. Kudos.
So, President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, again, as part of the restructuring, currently we have an individual that covers 3 different roles. And we really want to be able to focus and have a supervisor like we do for our payroll and our purchasing departments. And so this gives us the opportunity to be able to do that just because the staffing has increased, the demand for our accounts payable department has also increased as we are receiving more funds in our grants and our budget. We're definitely seeing an increase in the vouchers that we're processing and the amount of money that we're spending. So give us an opportunity to just focus on the accounts payable department.
Are there any comments or questions? I will just say that I think this is an important position to pursue at this time. Next item on the agenda is warehouse supervisor position, job description reclassification. Mr. Kruth.
President Anderson and members of the board. Also related, when you have more money in grants and you buy more stuff, you need to manage that stuff as it comes in and out. And that has also created a need to revisit these job descriptions as well for warehouse supervisor, Mrs. Kudos.
President Anderson, members, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, I will just say ditto. Mr. Kruth said again that it's also recognizing we have a current warehouse supervisor, but it's recognizing the level of pay to be at the same level as our other supervisors, along with the additional work that he's taking on right now.
Are there any comments or questions?
I think it's important that as we grow as a district, just as at every site level, when we grow in students, we need to look, do we need to add, how many new teachers do we need to add? How many professional support staff do we need to add to take care of those students? When our budget grows, we need staff to support that growth as well. And I think maybe from a public standpoint, that might seem like a waste. But the reality is what you do in the business office makes what happens in the classroom work. And so we have the responsibility to ensure that all of our departments reflect the growth that our district is experiencing so that we don't place over require of current employees in those positions. So just want to speak some support to the restructuring and specifically this position.
Well, that was very well said, and that was going to be my same observation. We're growing. We need to be able to manage our assets in the best manner possible, and I think the restructuring is a good. You're doing a great job looking at different areas that need to be restructured and staffed. So thank you. Now we will go on to the 2022-2023 district goals. Mr. Kruth.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. We went over this in the study session as well. Mrs. Penn is here to help answer any additional questions there may be. As a quick recap, we are still waiting for final data from the Arizona Department of Ed on our school labels, which will be the first school labels we will have received since 2019. In the meantime, I think the assessments have changed also every year commensurate with that. Those data were supposed to be delivered to school districts a week or so ago. They have not come yet. So we're still in a little bit of a limbo, which is putting us back some, but we want to be able to declare clearly to our staff, where are we moving forward? After some reflection on that, with our leadership team and our principals, felt that it is best as we continue to move through this time, while I would call it post-pandemic, what does that look like? We're still shaking some pieces off to hold steady with our district goals. And so to that, the recommendation is that we continue the goals from last year, which are two. One is that all Vail school districts schools will receive an A or B rating based on assessments given during the spring of 2023. And two, 90% of Vail teachers will contribute to the Beyond Textbooks website and or assist BT partner organizations, with the caveat, with the change, that there's a little bit more of a menu of ways that can happen, with the intent to broaden out the ability for more staff to support Beyond Textbooks components. So that's our recommendation. This is a study item. As we mentioned also in the study session, also to come in alignment with the notions that we talked about in all staff, which are high academics achievement and high quality relationships. We're exploring ways to quantify doing work around relationships. Not exactly sure what sometimes that's a squishy one to be able to quantify, but we're poking around on what might be able to do that. We're not ready to make a recommendation on that goal for this year, but just want to acknowledge that there's awareness of that and how we might be able to do that. So Mrs. Penn or I would be happy to answer any additional questions related to this.
Oh, Mr. Aiken.
I just thank you, President Anderson. I just want to say I love the menu of choices. Like, I think that's so super cool. Yeah, that's all.
Great.
Ms. Tippett. So I feel like the A and B rating goal is still full throttle. There's no easing up. There's no letting off the gas. This is all hands on deck every day, all year long. And so I fully support that goal. And like Mr. Aiken said, I really like the idea of menu of items for staff to be able to participate in that goal. I feel like it allows them to kind of find their creativity and the thing that is their jam, and be able to do that and contribute to our district goals.
Oh, Mr. King.
Yeah. So one of the questions that came up is, I was sitting there thinking about this. When we were doing this during the study session, we saw it in 2019, 2020, and 2022, right? If memory serves. But every one of them had a different assessment. So is Arizona going to keep a solid assessment so we can actually track growth, or are we just going to wing it on every assessment?
Mrs. Penn.
President Anderson, Mr. Caruth, members of the board, I cannot speak to exactly what the future holds for that. What I understand, two things that I'd like to communicate. One is that there has been some talk of having these assessments in place for at least a couple of different years. And the other is that we quite often hear, how do you track growth when you're moving from one assessment to another? And there are people who have way more knowledge about how that is done than I could explain. But the general idea is that every student has a score on one assessment, and then they have a score on the other assessment. And those within the Department of Education can track back and measure the growth, and it impacts each student individually. But across the state, everyone is experiencing that same level of how they moved forward. So there is a system. I can't explain it perfectly to you, but I have been assured that it is sound.
Okay.
And to paraphrase Mr. Aiken, it's not apples to apples, but it's fruit to fruit. I'm going to borrow that again. Yeah. And Mrs. Penn, is it my understanding, my recollection of that too, is while the assessment names have changed and there is some change, the bulk of the questions have remained the same. Arizona actually owns the majority of the questions are Arizona specific questions. And so I don't remember the exact percentage, somewhere between 50 and 75% of the questions are roughly the same. So to Mrs. Penn's point, they've got statisticians and diagnosticians that's their world, but it's not a completely new assessment and a completely different target. It's just some adjustments.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is educational enrichment programs. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. This is educational enrichment plans part 2. After every start of the new school year, there are a number of new staff who are hired who meet the criteria to be able to be eligible for EEP plans, as well as, you all know this from your rating, a few plans that get kicked back for clarification and some other things and need some additional scoring. And so that's what happens. There were 38 plans submitted for round 2. For a total of approximately 519 points that are being recommended. A target point value of $160 per point or $240 per point if taken as Vail vouchers. Happy to answer any other questions about that. With that, I'll make the recommendation the Vail School District Governing Board approve the educational enrichment plans and recommended point values as presented.
I'll accept motion.
I'll move.
Ms. Pratt moves.
Second.
And Ms. Tippett seconds. Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Tippett.
Just appreciation to our staff who are willing to put forth the time to create opportunities for our kiddos at various sites all over the district. And also very, very grateful to Board Member Pratt for doing round 2 along with Ms. Kaiser and Carla. So that's a chunk of time. It's a really chunk of time, and thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just a quick comment.
Yes.
A quick comment. I thank you. I love reading EEPs because it almost just reads as here's the passion of teachers, just what they're excited about. And I just love that. I love to see the creative ways that they want to bring what they're excited about to their sites. So I just love that we have this opportunity for teachers. I love that the teachers are willing to do it, to put in the time and the effort and the creativity beyond their school day. So I just want to say thank you to them.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is ASBA policy advisories. Mr. Cruz.
President Anderson and members of the board, there's a passel of policies that are being considered as a result of legislative new laws that are pending, as I mentioned in the background. While our school district is required to follow the law, it is, regardless of whether or not we have a policy, it is often that law that is then codified into policy. And we use the Arizona School Board Association Policy Services to come up with the templates for those policies. And historically, they've done an incredible job. It's usually former administrators and attorneys who do that work. We spent time in study session reviewing our packet this year. And so this is a study item. Happy to go through any of the individual policies if there's, again, if we want to do that in this portion of the meeting. There are 3 policies as a part of Policy Advisory Volume 34 that we did not bring forward to you for study at this time. We will do so at the next board meeting. We just wanted some additional time to review those 3 policies in relationship with our own legal counsel. So we'll be bringing those back a study next meeting. And unless there's other questions, we will be bringing back this packet of the remaining packet of policies as action. Happy to answer any specific questions.
Ms. Pratt.
I just want to thank our staff who've gone through this. This is riveting, a riveting read for sure, but it just takes so much time to be able to go through it. I think I could speak for everybody in the room that we all have the intent to follow the law, but sometimes understanding and knowing and then reading it and understanding it before things come up to seek clarification. There's so many things that as we went through this at the law conference that it was like, well, how do you define this? And what is this? And what's the measurement for this? So to be able to take that time to seek that clarification from our attorney or whatever, whoever it may be, it just takes a lot of time and effort. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I agree with Ms. Pratt. When the new policies were reviewed in different sessions at the law conference, and there's a lot to digest. And I'm grateful that we have the individuals who review and summarize and analyze to determine that our policies that we do put in place are within the law and within the spirit of the law as well. So any other comments or questions?
I'm just thankful for the attorneys that actually go through all the laws that actually, and then boil all this down to where we get something that's only 99 pages, not all of the laws that go with it, but hundreds and thousands of pages of laws. So the 4 guys, the 4 people at ASBA Policy Services. So Nick is the director of policy services, and reach out and say thanks to all them.
Okay. Oh, last item on the agenda is adjournment. And I will accept a motion to adjourn at, do I have a time?
8:22.
8:22 p.m. So I will accept a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. King moves and Ms. Pratt seconds. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. And the meeting is adjourned. And thank you all for attending.